the middle school, the high school, and the community survey will be, Mr. Clark set up 4 different ones. It'll all be on that one page, so we don't have to worry about links.
So we won't have any confusion,
Not
right?
any issues this time.
Okay.
And,
Well, it wasn't an issue last time. Did you what?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool deal.
What's that? No, I think we're good.
Yes, coming up.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get this meeting called to order. Board members, come on up.
Hey, Glenn.
Hey, man, we got to go. It's 5 o'clock. Not at all. Not at all. You got an agenda?
I haven't, yeah.
You got one?
Okay. Tried to call Rob, is he not coming? I don't know
No,
if he's
Rob's
still
not
working
coming.
midnight.
Bob's got called to go up for the championship game or something about the
Okay.
championship game, so he can't make it. I haven't heard from Mr. Johnson, but I know Mr. Ritchie's not coming. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mr. Ritchie is not here. Mrs. Bailey?
Present.
Mr. Palmer? Mr. Honeycutt?
Present.
Mr. Campbell is not here. Mrs. Garner?
She's here.
She's here.
It's not her. Mr. Johnson is not here. Mr. Edwards? Mr. Sturtevant?
Present. Get a motion that the school board adopts the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Honeycutt, second from Mr. Palmer. Roll call.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
No,
Yeah.
I'm good.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Sturtevant?
Yes. Mr. Nichols, floor is yours. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say that I appreciate the board coming in for this special meeting as a work session. I realized at the last meeting that I was using a lot of time to go over some very important items, but it was taking a considerable amount of time, and it was perhaps not the best place for the board to really enter into discussion or questions when we have so many other things going on. So the idea of a work session in this day in which things in K-12 education and with the new school and with budgets and so forth are so large and so much to be considered, it probably will do us well to set these up occasionally for needs. Yes, sir.
And Mr. Nichols, when it first came up, because our meeting was extended, Ms. Bailey did reach out to me in reference to doing a work session, which is a good idea, so our meetings can be more productive. So Ms. Bailey, being the parliamentarian, we have to give credit where credit is due. Thank you, Ms. Bailey.
And I thank both of you. I know that today's session is coming up at a time when a significant storm is coming in, so we don't want to overarch the time. There are a few items. The first one on the agenda is a follow-up on our discussion at the March board meeting, and one that we will see in April and May and other times, which is the issue of the new school accountability and instructional changes related to Virginia's profile of a graduate. I have placed at each of your tables, as well as Mr. Cyphers has placed at your tables, several of the significant issues that we are having to study and bring to your attention in the upcoming year, particularly as we are part of this first cohort of Virginia is for Learners, and there are expectations of the state for us to put many of these things into place. And I asked the Instructional and Policy Committee that is made up of Ms. Garner and Ms. Bailey to meet with us at 4 to be able to go through these in some detail, and they have done that, and we appreciate them doing that. I listed these out to your attention because in the upcoming year, and that's starting now, that's not starting in August, starting now, we will be engaging teachers from K through 12 in conversations and actually in committees looking at this whole piece of integrating the 5 Cs into the curriculum, looking at Mecklenburg's graduation requirement, because the state recognizes with the profile of a graduate, there are unique issues related to each individual school division. So we will be asking you to work with us in actually identifying our unique graduation requirements per the specific career pathway that students choose. And those graduation requirements would be indicative of academics, tests, and credentials required for each pathway. What would the workforce or workplace interaction community service actually look like for students? Attendance and tardiness issues and policies, their participation in middle school career programs and camps, the digital badges that they would be expected to earn for different things, and then the issue of the uniforms. Again, through the year, we will be bringing you options and asking for your consideration, and I will go through the instructional committee, but I do want to give the board an opportunity to ask questions about individual components of this at the beginning and, of course, at any time throughout as we consider these issues. And so I would ask for questions that you might have at this particular point.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman. Yes. Going back to the uniforms, is that something we're going to go, I mean, we would initiate moving forward sooner than later, because we want to have those available and ready when we get into our new school?
Right. Actually, I'm going to probably be asking, depending on the research that Mr. Cyphers is doing now, if we could make that an announcement and available at the May meeting.
Okay.
I'll present it in April, we hope, and then ask for a vote in May, or either present it in May and ask for a vote in June to give people time to look at some of the components that they would be a part of. Now, keeping in mind, again, this is for ninth graders
Right.
and below.
Right.
So that's a piece that we have to take into consideration.
Okay.
Any other thoughts or questions about that? Or other components of this? We're also looking at having one of the committees next year be a committee on actual school schedules. We know that there are some significant questions related to time and what's going to be the best. In our instructional committee meeting, Ms. Garner mentioned the fact that she's been a part of, and she knows other teachers that have been a part of, a 6-period day, 7-period day, A-B block schedule, 4x4 block schedule. And we're going to be looking at this as I talk with the elementary school teachers. I've got meetings set up over the next 3 weeks with each of the elementary schools, just like I have with the secondary schools, to go through these. You know, we're not going to make a request of the board to make any changes at this point, but we want to study that next year and what would be best for us to work with as we move to the new school and as we work with the new profile of a graduate, of a Mecklenburg graduate. The development of business partnerships, teacher lesson plans will be significantly impacted. We anticipate there'll be a group looking at that. And then I also anticipate this year asking you to consider making conduct a part of the honor roll for next year's grades, which we have not had, but we think would be the best thing again. Any questions about those?
For clarification, the conduct grade would be only K through 5 at this point?
That is correct.
Was just presented to us. And there's also some study that will happen regarding our current grading practices and percentages of tests, classwork, quizzes, those types of things. And there was also some discussion in our instruction committee meeting regarding committees of teachers that would be doing some work outside of their school day. And the fact that we might possibly would be offering them stipends to
Right.
participate on these committees to help us do the research that we need to do to move forward. My question is, are those monies in the budget presently? Or would they need to be added in? How do we expect to fund those?
Well, we do have funding
Okay,
in the budget for some professional development.
okay.
What we'll have to look at is how what we would be asking teachers to do falls in line with what we currently have and what we will be asking for. And the adjustments, if there are adjustments that need to be made after the Board of Supervisors gets through determining how much money we'll have for next year.
Mr.
The
Honeycutt.
first of those issues is with the integration of the 5-season to the curriculum. We know we need to have significant professional development on that, and we've already identified a class through Longwood University that we want to make available to a group of our teachers this summer, and how we're going to get that information out for them. And that would be kindergarten through 12th grade.
I have a question. I want to go back to the issue with the conduct, making that a part of their grade. With the issues that we've had in our schools this year, without calling any one of them to light, and the behavioral issues we're having, I think that would be a great deterrent for our children that, would receive a low conduct grade if they didn't know how to behave in the classrooms. That's not only K through 5, but that's K through 12. So why wouldn't we look at incorporating all of those grades and just not starting with one set of students?
Well, at this point, we have not, for the past many years, been giving conduct grades at the
Correct.
secondary level. We may want to look back at putting that into place again, but again, we think it's one of those things that we would want to study through the year as we look at some of these others, and then look at perhaps putting it in place the following year. Now, the board has the option of coming back and saying, no, we think we need to put the conduct in immediately and figure out a way to do it, but that would be doing it quickly.
Well, again, to me, it would be another way to deter our children from misbehaving, because not only would it affect, their grade, but, they would suffer through conduct as well.
So it would be, what he's talking about is a separate conduct grade. So you get a
Right,
grade
correct.
in English and history
Right.
and math and science, and then you get a grade in conduct.
Right,
So on the secondary level, you got 4 teachers, 4 blocks.
right.
So who's going to be responsible for the conduct grade?
Each teacher would be.
So they would, have a meeting on each child that they're serving and determine, how would that work?
I'll tell you, it's hard to do. If I have a child that is absolutely an angel for me, but he goes to Gavin's class, they got personality conflict. He'll make an A in my class, get an F in his.
On conduct.
Yes, on conduct. See, that's where the problems come in. Because students react to teachers differently. And that's where the parents came in. Well, my child doesn't get along with that teacher, and I move him out of there over here so it won't affect his conduct grade. I don't think it's fair that he's making straight A's in this class, but he's getting a D on conduct. Why can't he be on honor roll? That's just a few comments you're going to get from parents.
Yeah, because.
So how do you propose then to do if we were to do it on the secondary
Well,
level?
he's talking about deterrent behavior. It doesn't. Honestly, it does not stop it, because the ones that are going to misbehave are the ones that are going to misbehave all the way through. They don't care about their conduct grade.
Even if it meant, and I'm just
Yeah,
asking,
even if it meant-
if it meant keeping them off honor roll, or keeping them from succeeding in the future on a higher ed level above high school,
That conduct grade won't go, because that's not on your transcripts.
well,
See?
okay.
That was
I
going
think
to be
Mr.
the point
Palmer.
that I wanted to bring up. Where would it fall as far as, is it going to be something that amounts to anything, or is it just something else to be placed on a report card?
The way it looks, they're talking is just on the report card to deter the students' behavior if they misbehave, because they would not go on honor roll.
Well, my thing is, with all that we've had to happen here recently, we got to do something. Now, whether or not it is this or whether it is something else, we cannot afford to sit back and watch the behavior, and I'm looking at you, but I'm addressing everyone. We cannot afford to sit back and watch what's going on in these schools and on buses. And that was going to be another question, whether or not this conduct would affect the bus or not. But there are so many things that we have to look at here. Something is going to have to be done before someone gets seriously hurt, and then we are sitting here with all of this on our face.
I'm using a good example. He will know, I'm definitely, I had 3 kids in one of my classes. You can ask about kids. But I know they were going to a math class, and 5 minutes after they got in that math class, they'd be sitting in the office. Because somebody would be calling somebody from the office to come and get them, because they could not get along with the teacher. They spent more of their time in the office than they did in the math class because of the teachers.
Okay, who's the recommendations coming from? Who's making the recommendation to consider conduct as part of Umbro?
At this point, the recommendation is primarily coming from the elementary schools.
So the
That's
elementary
where they have
schools...
them. The elementary schools are asking for the option to put conduct grades back in place there.
Okay, what is the opinion of the secondary schools?
The secondary schools haven't had a great opinion at this point because we haven't been doing it at the secondary level. And they're saying it would be something that I think we could study to see what would be the best way to follow up with it, rather than come up with an overall policy for the whole school to begin with.
So the elementary school administrators are recommending or asking for this?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, if you start in elementary, say next year, and the kids in elementary school get used to the conduct grade, it really might change their behavior by the time they get to the middle school.
Is that because we don't have an alternative ed setting for our elementary students?
No, a lot of it has to do with the fact that some of the elective teachers right now have no grades whatsoever, and they're looking for something that would make it obvious that what they teach is as important as what's going on in the academic environment.
Okay. Mr. Nichols, also with the school schedules. Currently, our school schedule, one of the things that has come up is kids in Governor School.
Right.
They're on spring break the week before the regular school goes on spring break. So for parents who have one child, just say in Governor School at the high school, and the other child's at the elementary school, there's a conflict. Is there a way that that could be aligned?
Only if we look to work in conjunction in our scheduling, our calendar scheduling with other school divisions that are a part of Governor School. Because the Governor School sets their own schedule for the year.
It does affect the other schools as well,
It would, that's right.
on
But
both ends of the county.
I'm talking about other schools in the region.
Yes.
Other school divisions. That's just one of the issues when we share a program like Governor School or some of the CTE programs. When our calendars are not aligned, those individual schools have to determine one or the other, and the other schools that are not on the same schedule suffer. But they're determined by their board, not by our board.
So the other schools that attend Governor School are in the same boat. Their kids,
If-
Governor School kids.
Unless they built their schedule to be having the spring break at the same time as Governor School, they're in the same boat we're in.
So we would have to reach out to the other school divisions to see whether or not that's what they've done.
At the point of our building our next year's schedule, and we have a calendar committee to do that, then it would be necessary that we meet with the other, or see what the other school divisions are doing, and then talk about how we would align with one another and to take care of those opportunities.
So it could be the other schools are already in line with Governor School.
Yes.
That would is our next week. We're the week after. It's Governor School.
Governor School is this
We're
week.
out next
We're
week.
off next week.
Yes.
Yeah, we're off next week.
Yeah, so I think it'd be important to look at, because that does cause a conflict for us.
Yes.
And we're increasing the number of kids in Governor School with the STEM and Humanities program.
Right, yes.
Okay.
But
That's all I
now,
have.
we've already set our schedule for next year.
Right, I know we have, but do we continue to do the same thing? It's just, it can cause a conflict for some families.
Right. I'm sure it does.
Well, it also are conflicts with other school divisions athletically. I mean, there's some divisions that we compete against that have already had their spring break. And so we canceled those games with them because they weren't in school. Next week is our break, but yet we're going to compete next week when our children really should have a break next week. But, so, I mean, it's not only a governor's school issue, but it's
Right.
also an athletic problem. as
So
well.
some school divisions are already in line with that break.
No, they're not.
None?
No. I mean, we don't necessarily compete against all the governor's schools. I'm just saying that there are athletic issues as well when spring breaks don't line up. But my experience has been that it's just always you just kind of look at the calendar every year and think, okay, well, it'll be better this year, or kids don't get a spring break at all.
And we're in two different regions, correct?
Yes.
So we're in two different regions, and however, I think when it comes to our children, this division, we need to look at how it affects our kids
Right.
and our families.
And the more we cooperate and coordinate with other school divisions to share programs like Governor's School and like the IT Academy at the Higher Ed Center or the Advanced Knowledge Center for programs, the more it really helps us if we do align our programs with other school divisions. But that's a very difficult thing to do, because each individual school division wants to have their own right to set their calendar as they want to. But it's certainly something to look at.
But I think it's well worth looking into.
Yes.
Does it,
And I'm sure that there may be other schools out there that may have similar ideas about trying to match up. Because, yes, when it comes to athletics, that is a problem. What happens in a lot of cases is when I was in the situation in the school system, we would find two schools that are out the same time, and those two schools would play each other to make sure that there is a season going on. But there's definitely a need to look at that.
yeah, if we're committing X number of students that we know are going to be out for a week, yet our school system is still going on,
Right.
I think we should factor that in. And if it's an inconvenience for our children, not the children in the surrounding counties.
It's been an issue that goes back to the first time we looked at using two-way video as a way of helping our classes back in the late 80s, early 90s. And we can try again, but I can tell you it's always been one that has come down to a school division saying, we can't change our schedule because of this or this or this.
But does it matter if the other school divisions change their schedule when it
Well-
comes to our children?
No, but then the individual programs, like the Governor's School, they typically wait until the different school divisions have set their calendars before they determine what their calendar is going to be.
No, I'm saying, could we align ourselves? I don't know the number of kids we have in Governor's School from both schools. Maybe 40
25 spots in humanities.
in STEM?
And then 6 times 2, 12.
So-
It's between 35 and 40.
So you have roughly 40 families being impacted.
Right. So may I ask, are you suggesting that now that we have an idea of what next year's schedule is, we might look at readjusting next year's schedule to make sure that there's better alignment?
Well, you're impacting 40 families.
Right.
And if those 40 families have kids at high school, middle school, elementary school, it does cause an inconvenience. And if we could we know what the Governor's School schedule is. So if we decide when our spring break will be, correct?
Yes, we do. No, we
on-
decide.
We're not basing that on any other school division, correct?
No, we're not.
So if we know that 40 families are being impacted by a Governor's School spring break, why couldn't we align our schedule with their spring break?
Dora, when did they devise their academic calendar? How far ahead? Because we voted on ours months ago.
We would have voted on it at the last meeting, but that was the time when they had that storm that was supposed to come through and they canceled the meeting.
So they actually do their calendar.
Meet again in May.
So they actually do their calendar after we do ours.
It's roughly the same time every year. It's been that way. It's set, just like our schedules typically is the same spring break. Theirs has been the same as well.
Doesn't it depend on when Easter is?
Well, for many counties, it has in the past, but that's getting away from that.
Yeah.
Easter was late this year. We chose to choose before
The week
Easter,
before.
just because we wanted to get ahead, oh, well, stick to that, but not interfere with SOL preparation. But I don't know where Easter is next year, so,
That's all I had on it.
okay, we'll look at that. Thank you, sir. And before we leave this, Mr. Cyphers, you want to just let them know what you've given each one of them?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, Mr. Nichols. What I've given you is a very, very rough draft of what we're working on and what we're calling destination graduation. I presented the majority of this information. We talked about it last board meeting. Again, this is a rough draft. There's a lot left to be done for this. There's a lot of components that need to be included in it. As Mr. Nichols mentioned, such as the attendance and targeting policies, digital badges, work-based learning experiences, about uniforms and things of that nature. You'll see it has 2 pages in regards to culinary arts. As Mr. Nichols mentioned last month, everything is going to be color-coded according to our academies. All the academies have their own individual icons and colors now. So you'll see, for example, it lists the program, the pathway, as well as the cluster. It gives you some information about it. And we're going with a theme in regards to a GPS, which is why we're doing the destination graduation. It'll have some basic occupations there, as well as their projected growth rate. We'll have points of interest, so we'll include information. You'll see there's a little, at the bottom, it has like the career camps. They'll have the CTSO organizations, the different certifications they can learn. There's a very rough draft of a roadmap to graduation on the next page, which will list the different things that are required as far as the pathway. Ms. Hendrick and I are working on narrowing this down and actually adding some more things to that. On the next page, there's a work-based learning experiences. And this is just all a rough draft. This is not saying that we necessarily have all these options available now, but we're trying to figure out the best way to incorporate internal internships, external internships, and DOE is scheduled to release an update on what constitutes work-based learning experiences at the beginning of June, and after that, we'll go to a 2-day training that will talk more about work-based learning experiences. And from our information, we're anticipating they're going to focus some on rural areas because of our limit to internships and things of that nature. On the last page, it talks about the simulated workplace. We also have simulated workplace logos for each, and the only thing that changes for that is the color. On April the 29th, we're scheduled to take teachers and administrators from Parkview High School and Bluestone High School to see the simulated workplace in action in Madison County. I went along with Ms. Hendrick last month. Very interesting process. As I mentioned, I think briefly last month, the students actually apply for a job. They go through an interview panel. Usually an interview panel consists of an administrator, sometimes a school board member, sometimes a member from the industry that they're applying for, and they have certain jobs they apply for. And they have to complete an application, go through a mock interview, and then they're assigned job duties and responsibilities. And it's a brief overview, and this is stuff that has to be reworded. You'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner, everything is based on the 5 S's as far as creating an efficient workplace. And this is based on the West Virginia model, which is what Madison County used. They received a planning grant for it. As far as cost, there's not too much of an expense as far as starting it up. We can start out with some basic things. Students will go in and punch in and out on a time clock, which can be done with a tablet or some other means. And then they'll look at tardies and things of that nature when they're going through the process. And it was just very interesting to see because all the classrooms are very straight, very clean. Everything is situated and sorted very nicely. The students were very respectful, all the places that we went to. And it was just very interesting to see how the students were kind of supervising the other students to a certain extent. The instructor said, I can tell them all day, put on their safety glasses. But when a student tells them, it's completely different. And ROTC uses this model already a lot in their programs, and they have a lot of success with a similar model. So we are looking to incorporate this on a pilot basis next year for those teachers that are interested, and then study it about halfway through and see how that works, and look at possibly including it into more of our classrooms. Do I have any questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
As we move into destination graduation,
Yes, sir.
is there going to be anything on cursive writing, introducing cursive writing back into our school division?
That would be something we would have to talk about, and I have to talk to Ms. Rogers about. Those are all could be 5 components of the 5 Cs, which some of that needs to be added in here too as well.
Because part of that, when you talk about a young person signing their name, they're printing. And it's just one of those things I was told, let's do the SOLs, let's do this, we don't have time to do it anymore. But I think it is important, because we've seen example after example with our students, if they have to read old writings, cursive writing, they can't. They can't understand it.
Yes, sir.
And I just think it's one of those foundational things that if we can
Yes.
implement cursive writing back at the elementary level, I think it's important.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir. And that's what, this will provide more of a roadmap again, and we're still missing a lot of components that will kind of go from elementary to middle to high. And that's some of the things that we can look at adding into it, as well as we discussed the possibility of keyboarding as well, because students don't do really good keyboarding anymore.
Well,
They
that-
struggle when they get to their testing and things of that nature.
Everyone's texting on their phone, but still, the cursive writing,
Yes, sir.
that's a lost art, and it's sad.
I was just getting ready, Mr. Sturdivant, to mention something about, or ask about the cursive writing, where we're going to build that. And I mean, I don't know about the rest of the board members, but that's something I would love to see implemented back next year into our curriculum for our K through 5 students. I mean, some of these programs that we're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for, I know that we've got time to teach a child 15, 20 minutes out of the day how to write. And, you know, you've got to be able to sign legal documents, you know, whatever. And I know that I've had parents to tell me that's one of the reasons why, you know, their children don't go to Mecklenburg County Public Schools, is because they don't teach cursive writing, or why they don't send them here. They take them out, put them in the private schools, because that's so big for them, they're still teaching it there. So I would love to see that transpire and take place back in the school.
Ms. Rogers, you want to comment on that?
I would love to, thank you. It's actually an SOL for second grade, it's listed, it's in the new SOLs. We've got handwriting books every year, we teach it. The problem is, it is not, when students move to the next grade level, they're not made to use it, so it's an art that, like you said, it's a lost art. If it's not something you continue to do, you lose it. So they are taught to write in cursive in second grade. It's just, it's gotta be a trait that's carried over, it's gotta be an expectation beyond second grade in order for them to continue and to maintain it. But we buy the handwriting books every year, and they teach it, but it just doesn't get transferred beyond that grade level. So that's something we can certainly add, but that needs to be an expectation of teachers above second grade in order for students to continue to use it and master the art. But it is an SOL, so it didn't come out because of SOLs, it's written as an SOL.
But it's not tested on an SOL
It's
test.
not tested, that's right.
So there's a good chance if it's not tested, that's been sort of the way of things all these years of the SOL. If it's not tested, it's not reinforced.
Unless this board initiates it.
Unless the-
And we say so.
Yes.
We have the right to initiate that program.
Absolutely.
And use it. You know, I have an opinion. I've been here a long time, and I've watched this over the years, and I don't know who will agree with me. The education business has gotten to be a money business. It's all about the dollar, and it's about the lobbyists coming in and selling different programs. And
Amen.
one looks better than the other one, and the other one looks
Amen.
better than this one. And all the school divisions all over the world are using different ones, depends on who's the best salesman at the time. If we'll go back to the basics, I mean, a lot of these kids, you know, I said this about 8 or 9 years ago. One night when we were doing, we took everyday math, that came into being, and somebody took 30 minutes to show me how to add 3 figures. It upset, I thought it was the stupidest thing I'd ever seen. But we've got to, I've said, and I made the comment, I said, you know, I saw something new the other day that really made a lot of sense. And everybody go, well, what is it, Mr. Edwards? I said, it was a box full of cards, and they were called
Flashcards.
flashcards. And I said, man, you could hold them up. And I said, you know, after about a year, these kids learn how to add and subtract, and they could multiply and everything. And now it takes us 30 minutes. The parents cannot help their kids right now at home. I have a complaint all over this county that the parents can't do the math with the children. Now, that's pitiful. So maybe we ought to send all the parents back to school so they can teach their kids at night. And then we complain about the parents not being involved with their kids. Well, they don't know how. So I think we're missing the boat.
Mr. Edwards, I totally agree, and I've always said, before I even got on this board, programs do not teach children. Teachers teach children. End of story.
Amen, brother.
Ms. Bailey?
I have a question. Ms. Rogers, maybe you can clarify this. When they do what grade do they take their writing SOL?
Fifth grade, they no longer have a writing SOL at the elementary
Element.
level. It used to be in fifth grade, it was removed 4 or 5 years ago.
So when they do do they do any kind of prep work prior, anything to prepare them for that writing process that they have to do in the middle school?
Yes, they have writing problems that they do monthly.
And-
At the upper grade levels, a lot of times they're doing them on the computer because that's what they have to do at the 8th grade for the SOL writing test is to type it on a computer.
I wanted to make sure the board members heard that.
What was it? I'm sorry.
So the 5th grade writing SOL is
Yeah.
no longer required, but they do have to do a writing SOL in the 8th grade. And that 8th grade writing SOL is actually administered on a computer. So they don't even write their 8th grade writing SOL. So even though they're doing prompts all along the way, they typically practice them on the computer, right, Ms. Rogers?
At different grade levels, at the upper grade levels, at the elementary level, we start transitioning them to practicing on the computer.
So that-
We're trying to get them ready for the house.
So that when they get to the middle school, it won't be foreign to them to come up, to do it that way. So we have to live in two worlds. We have to live in the world that DOE is requiring of us now, and I agree that handwriting is important. It's important to read documents, history, all kinds of things. We just have to find a way to have it all. And I've always said we could have it all.
I think it's going to be up to the board to make that part of the direction we need to go in, if it will be the board's pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Well, I think we've heard very definitely that it is, and certainly this administration agrees with you that it is very important. I believe that the best way of implementing something is, like Mr. Cyphers has been saying, being able to put it in place in this way, that profile of a Mecklenburg graduate or workforce interaction is going all the way down into the elementary schools and saying some of these components are expected. And as we come up with that plan, being able to bring it back to you and say, yes, we put our stamp of approval on this as we vote for it.
Okay, how quickly would it be the pleasure of the board that we start looking at cursive writing other than just strictly second grade?
It's also an SOL in third, I forgot to mention. It's also, it's
Oh.
only listed as an SOL in those 2 grade levels. It's removed in 4th grade and up.
Okay.
It's in there written for second and third.
But it's still not
I
on the
think
computer.
next year, I mean, I was just telling Gavin, we all use cursive writing, and yet we still use iPads and computers.
Sure.
The thing about these young ones that are coming along, they're using cell phones, iPads, and they're using abbreviations. I had one English teacher said that she got her kids to write a 5-paragraph paper, and they were using abbreviations that they use on their cell phone. And I think if we start in the elementary schools with the cursive and carry it all the way through the 5th grade, I think the retention of the
graduation.
cursive will be there, and then they can still transition to the computer. And maybe even in middle school, ask some of the English teachers to have handwritten papers instead of.
So with your guidance, we will look at putting together a plan to bring back for you to look at and then to approve for next, looking at the possibility of
For next
putting
year.
in place for next year.
Yeah, not only, and as you look into it, I think it should go K through 12.
I agree.
And
It
I'll
needs to
wait
be
for.
K through 12.
Yeah, and I'll wait for, after you talk to the staff, see what they can come up with, but,
Okay.
and we'll go
For
from
what
there.
it's worth, this is not the only county who has been looking at putting cursive writing in. Some of the counties that I've been involved in, they're working toward putting cursive writing back in. So it's something that needs to be, and it is.
I have one more that you're standing.
Yes, ma'am. Click on keyboard. Keyboarding, we have discussed about that. That is, could be built into many ways into the programs. The issue, of course, would be if we build a full keyboarding class in, would be funding as far as having an instructor. On the Parkview side, we could incorporate a little bit more into the business technology class, but on the Bluestone side, it will be a little bit harder to incorporate because of the number of electives. We only have the technology option and the ag class. But that's something we could look at. There are multiple ways as far as the career aspiration piece. We have to, our current 6th graders have to have completed a career exploration class by the time they finish with the 8th grade. So that will definitely be implemented next year, and that's a component that if we don't have funding for a specific teacher, we should look into incorporating that some way into the class. But the ideal thing will be to have a class in the 6th grade where everyone is taken. Right now, your funding is definitely an issue as far as positions and space. Parkview Middle is limited on space.
Yeah, that's the big issue. Space on one end and,
Mr. Nichols?
yes, sir.
It's come up about having equity at both schools. What electives do we have at Bluestone that we don't have at Parkview and vice versa?
Bluestone has a technology series, the Technologies and Innovations, Introduction to Technologies, and Innovations and Interventions, as well as the Ag series. Parkview Middle has the same additional things, and they also have a coding option, and they have the Business and Technology class that Ms. Thompson is teaching. We have asked for a coding teacher for last year, in last year's budget, and again this year's budget for Bluestone Middle. So we've asked for a coding teacher to add in the additional staff, so that in turn would feed into the TEALS class that Amanda Bowen teaches. So we've asked for that the last 2 years in the budget.
Any other differences at the high school?
The high school early childhood is available at Parkview, is not available at Bluestone. The auto kids travel from Bluestone to Parkview. The IT Academy kids travel from Parkview to Bluestone. And TEALS travel from Parkview to Bluestone.
And ROT, you said
And
ROTC.
travel from Bluestone to Parkview.
Is that because of lack of teachers or
The
teachers?
ROTC, we're only allowed to have one program, according to the Air Force. The early childhood, we don't have any additional staff, but the teacher for tomorrow will be offered at both schools. We're in the process of, we'll conduct interviews this week for that, and hopefully have a candidate to submit to you all for approval at the next board meeting, the regular scheduled April board meeting. The auto, from my understanding, the program was removed some years ago, and that's where the current weight room is for Bluestone.
So, Mr. Cyphers, we have automotive students going from Bluestone to Parkview?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many from Bluestone go to take that
We
approximately?
have 8.
8,
We
okay.
worked on changing it and double blocking it, and we have to do it that way because we're losing so much time with travel, and
Okay.
NATEP requires us to meet a certain number of hours. So we double blocked it this year to
Okay.
eliminate losing so many hours. And we're looking at another option for students, for an IT Academy option, to be able to allow more students from Parkview to be able to participate and then free up some slots at Bluestone.
And then the cosmetology, both,
We have cosmetology, both students, both high school students can participate in cosmetology.
but because it's at the Estes Center, it's more difficult for the Parkview
It's a
students.
little more difficult for the Parkview students.
And we have a difference in our math programs from Bluestone Middle to Bluestone, to Parkview Middle, am I correct?
I would have to let Dr. Scales.
Yes, there is, Parkview Middle has an algebra process, but not over at Bluestone because of the staffing.
Well, so legally, we're in jeopardy if somebody decided we're not educating their children equally on one end of the county to the other. Because this question has come up to me in the last 30 days by a group of parents that are very unhappy. And they're going to test it if we don't fix it. And I'm bringing that up because it's going to happen. They're not playing. And so I think we need to fix it somehow. I don't know how. I'm not an educator. I don't know.
I mean, there's a way of making it happen. I mean, so if we just, as long as we know about it, we can make some accommodations.
Right.
So we offer algebra at the high school. So it seems to me,
I mean, that's one of the things I'm thinking about is that the kids can be transported to the high school if staffing was an issue. And also there are some online components that we've got that we could use but have it augmented. But, taking the kids to the high school would not be out of the normal possibility.
Right. We need to make the children's parents happy and the children, not me. So I mean, I just want, it's going to become a real issue.
Well, I can tell you that as we're looking at this whole piece, the students who are required to have a bachelor's or higher degree for their careers, and with the gifted committee, we're going to be looking at how that starts in middle school and what the expectations in middle school are for algebra, geometry, earth science, Spanish, and other things, to make sure that they have those options in place to get to the right classes at the high school level. Currently, we don't have trigonometry, and we need the trigonometry in the high school to be able to get them prepared for what's coming up, or
Teacher
statistics.
coming.
I'm sorry?
You got your teacher coming.
Okay, good. We need them.
I mean, it really, if we were able to take some students from Bluestone Middle to Bluestone High, it might even help the
The numbers there.
classroom ratios there.
Yes.
To make that work, so I don't see why that couldn't be done.
They've done that in the past couple of years. Bluestone Middle Schools have gone, kids have gone to the high school for math class.
I had 2 questions come up. Number one is associate's degree next year.
Okay.
Are we going to have associate's degree next year?
We made as public a understanding as possible that because we don't have, on our staff, the teachers with the appropriate bachelor's degrees, we would not be able to offer the associate degree in-house. Now, we have had parents that have talked about taking classes that we can't offer at the community college and us giving them credit for it. And we've agreed that we would be happy to work with them in that area. So it could be possible for a student to get that, but we can't offer all of the classes that would be required on our campus. And we're moving to the advanced placement classes so that they have the option for the correct classes for college preparation, but not the degree.
Okay, the second question, which we'll get in the new school, where are the government school kids going?
We've had conversation with the community college about that, and the closest option is Alberta.
That definitely has come up.
Right. And it's not only closest, but from the community college's perspective, the numbers of students that they have at Alberta are lower than the ones that they have at Keysville right now. So the impression that I've gotten, without coming right out and asking, is that they would prefer to have them going to Alberta. Well,
Parents would,
no, the community college.
Will we be allowed the same number of spots combining
Yes.
the school?
Yes.
So we'd still be offered the same number of spots?
We'll still be offered the same
Okay.
number of spots. We've got that built into our budget and their budget, so they're looking at that from a budgetary perspective as much as anything else.
But when I say closer, they're judging from where the new high school will be, right?
That's
Not from the
correct.
house that people leave from.
That is correct. They're judging by what's closest for us transporting from what that school location will be to Alberta, as opposed from that school location to Keysville.
But the kids don't leave from the high school.
Some of them do.
Some of them don't.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just
You got
saying,
s-
some of them do.
But you got
That's
some
all I'm
leave from
saying.
Clarksville,
yeah.
and some leave from Chase City,
pick 'em up
and they go to
from Chase City.
Keysville. So
Well, now, let me ask this question. Are you asking, could we continue to have them on both sites?
I'm gonna head it off before it happens.
I don't think the board is asking that of you
No.
tonight.
Yeah.
No.
No, I'm not asking anything, I'm just,
But I think looking forward, I think that's I mean, really, especially for those students on the far western end that could possibly do something else instead of driving all the.
Well, I mean,
No,
I guess it's no difference for us. We'll consider that and
Yeah,
think
it-
about it more.
community college to the high school.
I don't think the board is asking that, but I would say personally, it will probably work better when you have one school, the kids go to the same campus, because they got to come back to that same high school anyway. So it may work better. Some of the kids have to drive to the high school, drop the car off, and catch the bus. But that's a couple of years down the road.
Okay.
I have a question.
But it's good to know.
Ms. Bailey.
We had a little bit of discussion about AP classes for credit. And my concern is that presently, and I hope that this will change, but presently, if they're not getting a lot of AP prep. The classes that lead up to
Right.
the actual AP class.
That's right.
They're concepts that need to be taught earlier on.
That's right.
I mean, AP preparation really should start on the middle school level.
That is exactly right.
And so, right now, as we start to introduce more AP, I feel like, our students are at a disadvantage because they have not had the preparation that they needed to be successful. And I'm sure it's frustrating for the teacher.
Right.
Because there's certain concepts that they have to include in the curriculum. So I really hope, beginning next year,
Right.
in August, that there will be classes that are, or at least the curriculum that's being taught in that class
Is
would
better.
be preparatory for that AP.
I know that we had that conversation earlier because last week, was it, Ms. Rogers, in the gifted meeting, that very issue came up and one that we're going to be addressing.
The question, is that to prepare them to take the AP class or to prepare them to make a certain score,
To take the class.
just to take the class?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's the class preparation. It's called laying the foundation at the middle school in order to be able to have a stronger than SOL-focused access to be successful in the AP classes with rigor and everything that would coincide.
And who teaches that class?
We would have our teachers that would be trained to teach at that level and look at the curriculum and the pacing guides and all of that structure.
So it'll be a prep class to take an AP class?
No, it would be the current, it'd be like an honors math class, honors 6th grade, honors 7th grade, English, science, so forth.
Okay,
Okay?
okay.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Cyphers?
No, if any of you all would like to go with us on the 29th, let me know. It'll be an early morning for us because we have to go to Madison County. So if you're interested in going, just let me know and I will add your name to the list.
What day is that on, Gary?
It's on a Monday. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols, I've been given a look that we need to keep this meeting going.
Right.
Um,
So, want to give you a brief update on the budget. I did meet, Ms. Pfeffer and I met with the Finance Committee of the Board of Supervisors this morning with some questions about our request for the budget. Basically, they gave me an impression, I don't know how to say any more than that, that they're looking at doing what they can with our requests as long as they don't have to raise taxes. And so they asked the question, would it be possible, and I didn't give them any kind of an answer, they just raised the question in general, would it be possible to work on fixing our scale on a 2-year cycle, over a 2-year period of time, as opposed to all at one time. And so I'm preparing our staff to look at how that may be able to be done in case they come back with another option. But that is our number one priority. So I just let the board know about that so that we can be prepared to have the conversations as you meet with them one-on-one or any other kind of way to do that.
They're not gonna vote to raise taxes this year.
That's what they indicated.
Yeah, because it's election year.
Well, I mean, they would not commit to what they, even knowing what their revenues would be and how much they could give us with the revenue. And we agreed that the salary issue was our number one priority. They talked about the difference in last year's budget and this year's budget and our request for them being over $6 million, but what they didn't make public, it wasn't a public meeting, but what they didn't identify is that $4 million of that is in debt service now because of the new schools. So we're not asking that much more for curriculum. We're only asking a little over $2 million for the curriculum, which is primarily the changes in our salary scale. But that's very important.
So they asked you the question whether or not we could do it over a 2-year plan.
They raised that as a possibility of coming back and asking. They never asked me to tell them, could we, because I would.
I was going to say, do you want an opinion of the board that you can take back?
I think if we have public here to be able to put that out
Yes,
there.
for our next meeting.
Yes.
We can give you an opinion.
Okay, I would like an opinion of the board for that.
Okay.
I do have a question about our budget. How are we this year with our budget as far as dollars and cents?
We are.
Are we in line?
We are in line, yes.
Okay.
At this point, I believe we're looking at ending the year with roughly $500,000. and we will be looking at what that needs to go for such things as we've talked about, the stipends for some of our teachers that we know are in hard places and things.
Okay. Yes, please, to secure any of those monies that we could keep in the school system without giving it back.
Right.
Okay.
All right, the only two other things, yes, oh, I'm sorry, yes. There is a special announcement and request from Ms. Pfeffer about some information she found from the state last week.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Mr. Nichols. I received a email from McGuire Woods at the end of March on possible refunding of a 2003 Virginia SNAP loan. This will save us approximately $108,000 in interest. It will not make our loan any longer. It's for the next 5 years. We'll get about $24,000 to $20,000 for the next 4 years in savings that they'll put directly into our bank account at the end of each fiscal year. I talked to Mr. Carter, and he said as long as it does not lengthen our loan, that we should go ahead and do anything that would save us money for the county.
And I'm sorry, just for clarification, what was this from again, Ms. Pfeffer? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of it.
It's the refunding of loan 2003 from Virginia SNAP.
Okay,
It was taken out when Dr. Polakavich was superintendent.
okay.
It was one of the first loans for the South Hill Elementary School.
And how is it that they're able to do this?
They do this every so often. What they do is they resell the bonds
Okay,
at a lower interest rate.
okay. So that's on page 8 of that to show you.
Yeah,
How much money?
the application is included in the attachment to the budget piece on Board Docs.
No-brainer.
Yes.
No-brainer.
Absolutely.
I just want to make you aware.
Well, it's not something that requires a school board vote, but thankfully, we got the information in time because the documentation has to go in on Friday, and I'm going to sign it, and so will Wayne.
Thank God Ms. Pfeffer knows what SNAP is.
That's right.
Because it could have gone right by us. No,
Oh,
I'm
yeah, you
kidding.
could.
That's right.
Sometimes they do go right by.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they
Go
do.
back.
Deliberately.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Pfeffer.
You're welcome.
The last two items are, there's an update on the policy and the way the policy will be presented, and then we have a slight bit of information about our comprehensive plan that I've asked Mr. Jeffers to bring to your attention, so it doesn't take too much time at a regular meeting.
I'll go as fast as I can. Mr. Stewart, moving forward. Great to see you tonight. What we're proposing is, VSBA, we have adopted their, generally across the board, their changes to policy as our own policy. And minimally twice a year, and sometimes it's often 3 times a year, I guess I'm sure they have a system of reviewing all their policies. And so the February updates, and I attached those, and I'm sure you look at what they proposed, the new language versus what was there, and it shows the strike-throughs. And I really wanted to give that to you as an example. This is not what you'll be getting next Monday, for instance, but we're kind of proposing a process here. Most of these changes, as you look at them, are not substantive changes. There's one change, and literally the only change is they struck through the letter A. So that article is no longer there. Most of them, many of them, it's as you scroll through them and look at them, there are things that the policy code, the code reference changed, or the differences, just minimal differences. Some of them are more substantive though. If you scroll through them and you took a look at them, like for instance, the qualifications of superintendent, there was a pretty good list there, and that's no longer, they recommend, let's drop the list of qualifications and substitute a paragraph that says, the board certifies the person meets the minimum requirements of the State Board of Education, for the Board of Education. So it's basically saying, you set your own standard for who you want. What I did with these, and what we were kind of proposing to move forward is, with such minor changes in these, that we would kind of adopt those, rather than have to take the time for multiple meetings, and we'll be able to do this maybe blanket time at the 2 or perhaps 3 times a year, that all these changes, there were 57 changes that came through. Now, some of the policies, we never adopted the policy, so that change wouldn't impact us at all. But in most cases, it's literally changing the language. You've heard Ms. Alvey talk about that before. A shall to will, a must to maybe, and those kind of things. There are changes that are, we have made, Mecklenburg County. And if you look down at the bottom of our policy documents, at the bottom left-hand corner, there's a copyright VSBA, or there's not a copyright VSBA. Anything that this board has acted to change since the adoption of VSBA's policy manual does not have a copyright VSBA there. So we would drop that particular piece. And that's what, so when we go across and look at it, there are some of these changes, for instance. Ms. Pfeffer has, there are two things that will be in the April agenda, two policies that, for instance, one dealing with student activity funds and one dealing with the change the language about the employee work week or whatever it was. We have our own policy, our own substitution. If you look at it, you can find that there's a language word through here that says this many hours, this many days, or this many weeks. We have our own policy, and we will carry those across. So that's what we propose to do, bring across our own policies. If the board wills a change, a different change, or you want to bring up something, a different policy, during the instruction meeting, for instance, brought up the tobacco policy. Well, we can bring those up at any time to bring it in line, for instance. Anytime this board wants to change policy, we can. This is just a tool to, let's adopt all these minimal changes right off. Some of these minimal changes, though, we're already looking at new changes. For instance, we're interested in having part-time students join our school system, maybe from home-based students or homeschool students. If we can get those students in for, we had to change the language. But you look at the policy in here, that policy that VSBA has recommended is not what we would adopt. So we would substitute, we would have the language in here, so when the policy that you would see for that one, particular policy on Monday, would be the policy that we're recommending to you. We would then spend some time with the few, in this case, I think there's maybe 3 or 4, that we would say, here's the ones I think you want to pay attention to and look at. Is this good with you? Then we would take those changes or not make the changes as your will was. So that's kind of what we're proposing here in the policy manual as to moving forward. Does this seem like it will work? It's kind of looking for a little guidance here. You can look through and see what all the changes are. I would propose doing that exactly the same way, the May update, and sometimes there's updates after the law's going to affect in July, but anytime they come through the big blankets, and we would actually bring these in, you'll have the proposed language, the markup language, and we would adopt those unless we set them aside. So that's kind of what we're proposing as a way to approach this. If any particular one you want to look at, I mean, I can see examples of any of them. It's interesting to look at. If you look at the SOL, it went from a page and a half to a paragraph. All that was got rid of. Why? Because now the state doesn't require the standards of learning. And any word the standards of learning was referred to in a policy, that's been struck through because now it's within the assessments. So those are the kind of changes you find in here. So that's what we're proposing here.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I guess getting the updates or the adjustments, whatever they make with the VSBA, I imagine they're doing those to keep in line with the DOE. Is that correct?
Well, they said their policy is changes.
That's what I mean, the VSBA policy, when they make these changes, I assume, and they're doing this to stay in line with what the DOE is requiring.
Or legislature. The
Legislature, okay.
Law change,
Okay.
or guidance change, or attorney weighed on it and said, oh, we need to change this and tweak this, or maybe some rulings. Yeah.
So, and I guess another question would be, if we waited to make some of these changes, would be in a conflict or ever in a situation where we weren't following it at that time and we'd have to go back and make adjustments then? Do you understand what I'm saying?
So like these came out in February, and I guess in theory, we should adopt them. If they came out February 1st, we would adopt them, have a special meeting and adopt all the changes so that we would all be in line now. We're always under the policy on the books. So if we don't adopt any of these policies, we're still under our policies. We just have to think about why do we have a relationship with the SBA? If they say, if they're attorneys and people say, Blake, we should change these, but I don't think you would get in trouble because we have one policy on our books right now. That's the only one we're working on.
And that was my only, right, that was, if we were to wait, to do some of these, group them at, a certain time, that would just be my only concern, would it be a conflict?
I can't see see where it'd be conflict and let, no, I didn't see that.
Okay.
I thought I had an example of that.
Okay.
Our policies are for Mecklenburg County.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think what you're thinking about, if the VSBA sends this policy down, well, that one might not work for Mecklenburg County. We have our own that we put in that works for Mecklenburg County. So we're basically legal, but we don't have the same one with VSBA.
But the thing
That's
is,
simple.
right. But for instance, at the first reading of the waiver, the special permission waiver for verified credits.
Right.
Last board meeting. Well, that was Mecklenburg County coming to you and saying, hey, we have a chance here to help our kids, and we make this our policy. That is not VSBA policy.
Right.
It was reviewed by legal, but that would be our own. If there's not one, but if there was an update in this particular policy, or one that comes out in May, that was contrary to what we just adopted in April, that's the ones I'm talking about. We look side to side and say, our policy, we don't have the copy right here, this is our policy. Our policy is different than this. So we're going to keep our different policy, and we're not going to bring the changes. Unless we might look through there and say, oh, they had, instead of a strike through shall provide and make it provides, we changed the tense, so that's, yeah, that makes sense. But substantive issues that this board has said, we want to have it this way, that's what the comparative would be. And if you want to change the policy, so nothing would preclude us if, policy AF, which is the adoption of comprehensive plan, that one has modifications, minor modifications. But if you said, well, we don't want that policy, we want to substitute this for our comprehensive plan, this list language, then we get rid of the copyright VSBA, put the language we choose in there, once it gets vetted by our attorney, and then we go in.
Okay.
And we would keep that, if the AF policy updated, we'd say, hey, you guys changed this last year, you want to keep the change, or you want to move it? And that's the kind of thing we want to make sure, because I know there's been at least one place, maybe two places, that prior policy was lost when it moved over to VSBA. We don't want that to happen.
Okay.
But anytime we do have something, or if you say, we used to have a policy, and if you can think of it, and you can find where it is in here, we can go.
And put it back in
how we want the
place.
policy to be. We can put a policy in because it's your policy.
The most important thing is that the policy that is available to the public to look at has to be what we want, and that what we follow, because it's got to be public.
I have a question.
Ms. Bailey?
So, next meeting, we actually will be signing that contract again with VSBA to have their policy services. My question is, when we want to adapt the VSBA policy that comes to us, why do we have to pay another attorney to review that? If we have the VSBA service, why can't they review it for us?
We do not send any change of this. When they come through, we take this as, this is good to go legally, and we don't question anything. But if we have, like the policy for the part-time students, for instance, we're going to insert our own language in there, and we want to run that by legal counsel to make sure, are we set, is there a legal hitch we want to avoid here, or is it good to go? And hopefully the attorney will say, nope, that'd be perfectly fine, put it in there. But that wasn't vetted by VSBA's attorney. That would be, so that's a change, because we're adopting something different from what VSBA said. That's one reason we go back to our attorney.
Legally, we don't have to belong to the VSBA. I mean, we did this one time, but we got rid of all the VSBA policies and went away from them, had our attorney, who happened to be the same attorney we have now, they drew us a whole new policy manual, and we lived with it for, I think, 4 or 5 years. And then we went back to VSBA policies, but we lost everything we had because nobody
Because we adopted, nobody-
interjected what the policies we had previously, so we started over. I mean, it was a real mess, so.
And the board has the right to look, as you said, you have a copy of the old one. The board has a right for any individual member to bring to the table, this is the way we did it before. We would like to look at doing this again and seeing if the board would adopt that in lieu of what the VSBA has.
And you just go in there and say, hey, that seems to me to fit section D, all right? There was a DB, now there's going to be a DC. And then we'd run that by our attorney, and our attorney would say, yep, policy reads fine, no issues there, and they would then just substitute right in.
How many copies, do we have a hard copy of our policy, correct?
I'm not a big paper person, so I do not have a hard copy of it, but it is about 437 pages.
No, the specific adoptions that we've made as a county, not the entire VSBA policy.
Do I have a hard copy of those? No. The way we know right now is by, if you scroll through each policy by alpha and you look down at the bottom, if it does not have a copyright VSBA, then it is our change. We have made at least one change. It could be something small or it could be something big. So those policies, there are a number of policies that do not have copyright VSBA. Those are the ones that this board has changed, I believe. But I can find that number for you, but it's probably, I'd say it's in less than 20.
Right. So if we had 20 changes to the overall VSBA policy, we should be able to have that in a binder.
Okay.
So in the event that we do the electronic change again, we'll forever have a hard copy.
Right. So, we can certainly do that. I keep it electronically, so I have the current D policy. Current D with the date most recent adoption was made. So if a new D was adopted next month, any change within the D.
That will be an adoption that the board makes.
That's right. Any adoption that was made, that policy only comes from the board. So any policy that was adopted would have the date that the board adopted it, and that would then, so policy date adopted today would be April the 8th. If you adopt a new policy tomorrow, the new D, we'd have all the document in there, but now there'd be a 4-9.
Only the policies that are unique to the county. I think we should have a hard copy. And that way, when we adopt the VSBA policy, we still have a hard copy of ours, so they're not lost. And that's happened before.
That should be.
Ms. Garner, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Is there a policy manual in every library in the county?
Not that I'm aware of.
No,
At
no.
one time, it was supposed to be.
Well,
a policy manual in every
That
library.
would have been at one time a requirement of the state, but now with the electronic opportunities, what they are, it's no longer required. They require that you have your policy manual on your website available for people to go to and see. And that's where we ran into problems at the very beginning, because we had two different policy manuals online for people to look at and compare. And we had to make sure that we got rid of that happened during this administration, in the past 4 years. But there's now only one, and we have to make sure that it's correct.
Any other questions, reference to policy? Okay, thank you.
Last thing is about the comprehensive plan that has been a committee working on all year long and will be presented to you in April.
Okay.
I have a couple of things on the comprehensive plan.
Ms. Bailey?
Your staff did a great job on that, and we appreciate that work. There's a couple of changes that I would like for you to consider. On page 2, you list out all of the, I'm trying to get there so I don't misspeak. You list out all of the board members. The majority of this work was done in 2018, and that's why, I'm assuming that's why you've got my vice chair under my name. Could you put chair under Brent Ritchie's name for 2018? Since he was the chair during the time of the work. If you're gonna put mine there, if you're not, if you wanna strike that for me, that's fine too.
Well, it has up top 2019, but then it's a typo there.
Yep.
It says 2019 up top,
Yeah.
and then it lists you as the vice chair, and I'm the chair.
Well, for
Which-
2018, it lists me.
Right, but up top, it says members of the school board as of January 2019.
Yeah. So either way, you wanna fix that.
Yes.
And then on page 6, there is some discussion background of the county. And you list the county seat as the town of Boynton. And other principal towns are Chase City, Clarksville, and South Hill. Might I suggest you add La Crosse to that list? They do have local government in La Crosse, and I'd just like to see that on there.
Thank you.
Gracie doesn't have local government, do you?
No.
No.
And then on page 7, there's some discussion of 4-H involvement at the middle school level with Real World, Real Money, and at the high school level with Reality Store. But we also have some 4-H program at the elementary level, and I think it's called School Marketplace or something to that effect, if we want to, include that. And then on page 14, there's some metrics that are listed to gauge how we're doing on our objectives. And I think it's number 4, extended year programs to put books, materials in students' hands. Just need an apostrophe there. And I just make just a suggestion. When we were working on these metrics and how, some of them kind of got wordy, and I don't know if we need to include all of what we talked about with metrics. We might be able to tidy those up a little bit, just so it doesn't get so long. But that's all I had on the comp plan. Good job. Oh, and one other thing. There's a link to I believe our capital improvement plan. Can you also include a link to our gifted and talented plan? So because that should be there for people to see as well.
Anything that's available electronically, we will link to it directly to this document.
Okay.
This document is intended to be an electronic version that will live on our website. With anything that we link to, we actually
Very good.
reference to anything, we will jump to it, yes.
Okay. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Anything else?
It's okay, I will invite all the members of the review committee, and you have that list on there, but then I'll invite them to the meeting on the 22nd, that this will be presented. We also want to think about the planning process, and maybe they would want to invite them to this meeting. There needs to be an identified portion for the policy that you have public input on the comprehensive plan. And you can do that in just one month. May board meeting. When the announcement comes out, there'll be a period of public input for comprehensive plan. But just keep that in mind, that needs to be somewhere.
We'll have to have a public meeting somewhere, public input hearing somewhere. We can either do it by having a special meeting as we did with the budget, or we can do it by having it as a part of our regular meeting as the Board of Supervisors does now for public hearings.
Possibly it's going to be short, so just include it in our regular meeting.
So will we vote on this month?
No, we will vote on it, it'll be presented to you in April and voted on in May.
May, okay.
And that would mean that the public hearing part would be a part of the May meeting.
The public hearing has to take place prior to the vote.
Yes, so you could do it all.
You
the
could
same
do it at
way.
one night?
You could, but if you had.
When do we need the vote? When do you need for us to vote on this so you can move forward with it?
June would be fine.
So we can vote in June, we can have public input in May, vote in June.
Okay.
Present in April, public input May, vote on it in June.
Okay. And that's all I have for the board at the work session, unless you all have other questions you want to bring up.
I don't think there's anything else. Board members, have anything else related to the items of the superintendent? Well, that's what we have to talk about tonight.
Scrappy meetings Wednesday.
Okay?
They meet Wednesday for Fairfax.
Okay. Robotics heading to Fairfax on Wednesday.
We had one DI team to move on to go to globals this year, which will help us budgetary-wise.
Is that on our webpage about Scrappy and the DI teams?
I'll have to look and see.
We can just put it on our Facebook, both of them, Scrappy and our DI.
The DI was on this weekend.
I think so. Yes.
That way, yeah, through social media, we can get it out there. If nothing else, we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Look at that.